The Senate chamber buzzed like a live wire, packed with reporters, cameras, and restless staffers. Everyone knew this wasn't just another hearing, it was a showdown. At the center sat Merrick Garland, posture rigid, chin high, radiating the smugness of a man who believed his authority was untouchable. Facing him was Senator John Neely Kennedy, his trademark calm masking the fire building beneath. Garland adjusted his glasses, leaned into the microphone, and fired the first shot. His voice dripped with condescension. "Senator Kennedy, you may enjoy your little sound bites for the evening news, but your questions show just how out of touch you really are. Washington doesn't need jokes, it needs serious minds." The insult hit the room like a slap. Some gasped, others exchanged nervous glances. Garland smirked, convinced he'd humiliated Kennedy in front of a live national audience. But Kennedy didn't blink. He let the silence hang, his eyes locked on Garland like a hawk sizing up prey. Then he leaned forward, his Louisiana drawl cutting through the chamber. "Mr. Garland, if common sense and honesty are outdated, then maybe what's new in this room is your arrogance. And arrogance, sir, doesn't make you smart, it makes you reckless." The chamber went silent. Garland's smirk faltered, just a crack, but enough for the cameras to catch. Kennedy wasn't done. His tone hardened. "You think insults make you strong? No. They make you small. And right now, the only thing you've exposed is weakness, yours." The audience froze. The trap Garland thought he'd set had flipped. And Kennedy, steady as ever, had just taken control of the battlefield. The cameras zoomed in, catching the flicker of unease crossing Merrick Garland's face. His attempt to humiliate Kennedy had backfired, and everyone in the chamber knew it. Reporters scribbled furiously, staffers exchanged glances, and the tension thickened like a storm about to break. Garland cleared his throat, trying to regain composure. He leaned forward, voice sharper now, laced with irritation. "Senator, this isn't a courtroom drama where you get to play the clever country lawyer. This is the Department of Justice we're talking about. Your grandstanding may impress voters back home, but it has no place here." It was another jab, another attempt to corner Kennedy. But Kennedy didn't flinch. He straightened his papers slowly, deliberately, then raised his eyes and locked them on Garland with the calm precision of a man sharpening a blade. "Mr. Garland, let me make something crystal clear," Kennedy began, his voice steady but powerful, carrying across every corner of the chamber. "I didn't come here to play a role. I came here to do a job, to hold you accountable. And if that makes you uncomfortable, then maybe it's because accountability isn't something you're used to." The words sliced through the air. Garland blinked, shifting in his seat, his confidence unraveling by inches. Kennedy pressed harder, leaning in, his tone sharpening like steel. "You call my questions grandstanding? Sir, they're the questions the American people are begging to ask. They want answers, not excuses. And when you dodge, when you sneer, when you insult, you're not insulting me. You're insulting them." The audience erupted in murmurs. Even Garland's own staffers looked rattled. Kennedy had turned Garland's insult into a direct strike against his credibility. For the first time, Garland looked less like the nation's top legal authority and more like a man trapped under the spotlight. By now, the Senate chamber felt less like a hearing and more like an arena. The weight of Kennedy's words lingered in the air, every syllable replaying in the minds of those watching. Garland's usual composure was cracking, and the cameras caught every twitch, every forced breath. Determined to strike back, Garland leaned closer to the microphone. His voice came out sharp, almost desperate. "Senator Kennedy, you can paint yourself as the voice of the people all you want, but the truth is you thrive on division. You stir anger. You weaponize words. That's not accountability, that's chaos." Gasps spread through the chamber. Garland had crossed a line, accusing Kennedy of being a political arsonist. It was a bold move, maybe even reckless. Kennedy didn't move right away. He let Garland's words hang like smoke, choking the room. Then, in a slow, deliberate motion, he leaned forward, his eyes locked on Garland with a fire that silenced every whisper. "Chaos, Mr. Garland?" Kennedy's drawl carried the sting of a whip. "You want to talk about chaos? Chaos is when the nation's top law enforcement officer can't give straight answers. Chaos is when politics matter more than truth. Chaos is when Americans can't trust the man who's supposed to protect justice." The audience murmured louder now, reporters scribbling furiously, knowing they were witnessing a viral moment unfold. Garland shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his authority slipping away with each passing second. Kennedy pressed the knife in further. "I don't weaponize words, Mr. Garland. I speak them plainly. And the plain truth is this: your job is not to protect your pride, it's to protect the people. And right now, you're failing at both." The silence that followed was deafening. Garland's face tightened, his lips pressed into a thin line. He had tried to paint Kennedy as the villain, but once again, Kennedy had turned the attack into a devastating blow. The air in the chamber had shifted. The crowd wasn't leaning toward Garland anymore, they were leaning toward Kennedy. The senator's words had cut deep, and even Garland's allies on the committee shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Garland tried to rally, his tone rising with frustration. "Senator Kennedy, your accusations are baseless and reckless. You're undermining the very institutions you claim to defend. If Americans lose faith in justice, it won't be because of me, it will be because of politicians like you who treat these hearings like theater." His words echoed with defiance, but there was a tremor underneath, the sound of a man losing control. Kennedy tilted his head, almost amused, then leaned into the microphone, his voice steady and deliberate. "Mr. Garland, if this is theater, then you wrote the script. You brought the arrogance, the evasions, the half-answers. All I've done is shine a light on them. And if Americans are losing faith in justice, maybe it's because their Attorney General spends more time dodging accountability than delivering it." The line landed like a thunderclap. The chamber buzzed with whispers. Garland's jaw tightened, his fingers tapping nervously on the table. Kennedy didn't stop. He turned slightly, addressing not just Garland but the cameras, the American people watching at home. "You say I'm undermining institutions? No, sir. I'm protecting them. Because an institution without accountability isn't justice, it's just power. And power without accountability is dangerous." The audience broke into scattered applause, something rarely seen in such hearings. Garland blinked, stunned by the reaction, realizing he'd lost the room. Kennedy leaned back in his chair, calm and collected, letting the silence punish Garland more than any insult could. The senator had shifted the battleground, making Garland look less like a defender of justice and more like a man hiding behind it. By now, Garland's composure was hanging by a thread. His usual polished answers were gone, replaced with visible irritation. His voice cracked slightly as he raised it, trying to reclaim dominance. "Senator Kennedy, you sit there pretending to be the guardian of truth, but what you're really doing is grandstanding for the cameras. You twist words, you mislead the public, and you degrade this process with your theatrics." The insult was sharp, raw, and desperate. Garland leaned back, convinced he had finally struck a blow. But in that moment, Kennedy leaned forward, his expression hardening, his drawl sharper than ever. "Mr. Garland," Kennedy began slowly, his words slicing through the tension, "I don't need theatrics. I've got the truth. And that truth scares you, doesn't it? Because when the truth comes out, it doesn't need smoke, mirrors, or fancy titles, it stands on its own. And right now, it's standing a whole lot taller than you." The room erupted in gasps and low murmurs. Garland blinked, his face flushing, his attempt to frame Kennedy as a showman turned to dust. Kennedy pressed harder, his voice rising just enough to command the chamber. "You think the cameras are my audience? No, sir. The American people are. And they don't want theatrics, they want answers. And the fact you keep attacking me instead of giving them answers tells us everything we need to know about who's playing games here." The silence that followed was devastating. Garland's insult had not only failed, it had handed Kennedy the perfect opening to expose him further. Garland's hands clenched on the table, his jaw locked tight. For the first time, he looked less like a man in control and more like one on the verge of losing everything. The chamber was electric, every eye fixed on the two men locked in battle. Garland shifted uncomfortably, but Kennedy leaned in, his tone sharpening into a prosecutor's rhythm. "Mr. Garland, let's stop dancing around," Kennedy said, his southern drawl calm but commanding. "Simple question. Can you tell the American people, right now, why investigations under your watch seem to stall whenever they touch powerful allies, but move like lightning when it's someone you disagree with politically?" Garland froze. His lips parted, but no words came. The camera zoomed in, capturing the hesitation, the flicker of panic in his eyes. Kennedy didn't give him time to recover. "I'll ask again," he pressed, his voice harder now. "Why do the scales of justice tilt depending on the politics of the person standing before you? That ain't justice, sir, that's favoritism. And favoritism is corruption wearing a suit." The audience gasped, reporters scribbling furiously, knowing Kennedy had landed another bombshell moment. Garland attempted to muster a response. "Senator, I categorically reject the notion." Kennedy cut him off instantly, his voice booming. "Reject it all you want, but the American people see it. They see the delays, they see the double standards, and they see you sitting here dodging a straight answer. That silence you're hiding behind? That's the loudest confession in this room." The chamber erupted in murmurs, some audible applause breaking through before being hushed. Garland's face flushed red, his grip tightening on the edge of the desk. Kennedy leaned back, letting the silence suffocate Garland. He had posed the kind of question that couldn't be dodged without consequence. Garland wasn't just cornered, he was exposed. Garland's face had gone crimson. His carefully rehearsed composure was gone, replaced by raw anger. He slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing through the chamber. "Enough of this circus, Senator Kennedy." Garland barked, his voice cracking. "You think you can smear me with cheap accusations, but you're the one undermining faith in this institution. You're reckless, irresponsible, and frankly, an embarrassment to this committee." The chamber erupted with gasps. Even Garland's own staff looked stunned. He had crossed a line. Kennedy didn't move. He let the words hang in the air, let Garland's outburst dig its own grave. Then, slowly, he leaned into the microphone, his expression like carved stone. "Mr. Garland," Kennedy said in a low, steady tone, "I may be an embarrassment to you, but I'll never be an embarrassment to the people I serve. They sent me here to ask the questions you're too afraid to answer. And judging by that outburst, it looks like I hit a nerve." A ripple of murmurs spread across the room. Garland tried to interrupt, but Kennedy's voice cut through, sharper and louder. "You call this a circus? No, sir. This is sunlight. And sunlight has a funny way of showing folks what's been hiding in the shadows. Right now, what they're seeing is a man who'd rather insult his critics than face the truth." The audience broke into scattered applause, some even rising from their seats. Cameras zoomed in on Garland's face, tight jaw, clenched fists, eyes darting like a cornered animal. Kennedy leaned back slowly, his calm presence a perfect contrast to Garland's rage. It was no longer a battle, it was a dismantling, piece by piece. The room was still buzzing from Garland's meltdown, but Kennedy wasn't done. He leaned forward, his eyes locked on the Attorney General like a hawk circling its prey. "Mr. Garland," Kennedy began, his voice cool but razor-sharp, "the people watching this don't care about your insults. They care about one thing, justice. So let's get clear. Can you tell this committee, under oath, why cases involving political allies vanish into thin air while cases against opponents move full speed ahead?" Garland opened his mouth, but nothing came. His lips moved, his face tense, but his voice caught in his throat. Kennedy pressed harder, his tone rising just enough to echo across the chamber. "Is it incompetence, Mr. Garland? Or is it something worse? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like justice under your watch has two sets of rules, one for friends, one for enemies. And I'll be damned if I let that slide without an answer. The audience stirred, a wave of murmurs rippling through. Reporters leaned forward, pens flying across notepads. Garland shifted in his chair, gripping the table as though it could anchor him. You don't want to answer? Fine, Kennedy continued, his drawl laced with steel. But your silence is an answer. It tells the American people you can't defend what you've done. And that, Mr. Garland, is louder than any speech you could give. The camera zoomed in on Garland's pale, shaken face. His eyes darted toward his aides, but none dared intervene. He was alone, trapped under the weight of Kennedy's words. Kennedy leaned back, folding his arms with finality. The senator didn't need to raise his voice. The silence, the uncomfortable, devastating silence, did the work for him. Garland straightened his shoulders, trying to salvage the moment. He cleared his throat, his voice trembling but defiant. Senator Kennedy, your accusations are baseless. The Department of Justice operates with fairness and integrity. I refuse to let this committee be hijacked by political theater. You insult the very system you claim to defend. The words echoed, but they carried no weight. The tension in the room was suffocating, everyone waiting to see how Kennedy would respond. Kennedy tilted his head, a faint smile curling on his lips. He leaned toward the microphone and spoke slowly, each word cutting deeper than the last. Mr. Garland, if this is fairness, then God help America. Because the people out there don't see integrity. They see excuses. They see double standards. And they see a man who just proved, on live television, that he can't answer the simplest damn question. The chamber exploded with gasps and murmurs. Garland's jaw tightened, his face pale. His attempt to claw back authority had collapsed into dust. Kennedy didn't let up. His voice rose, calm but thunderous, filling every corner of the room. You call this theater? No, sir. This is accountability. And accountability is the one thing you've been running from your entire tenure. But not today, not here. Garland's hands trembled slightly, his pen tapping against the table as he stared down, avoiding Kennedy's piercing gaze. The audience knew it, the knockout blow had landed. The hearing room was dead silent. Garland sat slumped, his once calm demeanor shattered. Cameras zoomed in on his trembling hands, his downcast eyes, his silence screaming louder than words ever could. Kennedy leaned in one last time, his voice steady, deliberate, and devastating. Mr. Garland, I didn't come here to trade insults. I came here to do what you've refused to do, give the American people the truth. And the truth is simple, justice is supposed to be blind. But under your watch, it's been peeking out from under the blindfold, choosing who to favor and who to punish. That, sir, is not justice. That is corruption in its Sunday best. The audience erupted, gasps, scattered applause, reporters furiously typing, knowing they had just witnessed a career-defining moment. Garland tried to speak, his lips parting, but no sound came. Kennedy raised a hand, stopping him cold. No more excuses, Kennedy said firmly. History won't remember your talking points. It'll remember this: when you were asked to answer for your record, you had nothing. The room shook with applause now, louder, bolder, unrestrained. Some stood on their feet, others whispered to each other that Garland had just been dismantled, live, before the entire nation. Kennedy pushed back from the microphone, his eyes sweeping the chamber with quiet authority. He didn't gloat, didn't smile, he let the silence and the crowd's reaction do the work. Garland sat frozen, his face a mask of defeat. The cameras lingered on him as the gavel struck, marking the end of the hearing, but for Garland, it felt like the end of much more. For Kennedy, it was victory, measured not in applause, but in the undeniable truth that had just been laid bare for all to see. Ladies and gentlemen, today wasn't about me. It wasn't about insults or politics. It was about truth. The Department of Justice belongs to the American people, not to politicians who pick winners and losers behind closed doors. And when someone in power forgets that, it's our duty to remind them. Mr. Garland tried to dodge, tried to distract, even tried to insult, but none of that changes reality. Justice must be blind, or it isn't justice at all. So let this hearing stand as a message: no one, no matter how powerful, is above accountability. Not in this country. Not on my watch. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.